You don't lose. Okay. So being a new agent, so the buyer, if they want to do inspection, so do they plan to put like a well and septic or anything on it? So he would want to call. Yes, so well and septic. Oh, yeah. So, so yeah, so it doesn't, I mean, so you. Okay, okay, so yeah, so it's. Yeah, that's. No. Since I seen somebody, yeah.
I actually was having a good my brother. Yeah. That's why I was in your home.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I know you guys not in your office, so I
I
actually
know.
say hi. Usually you guys are busy.
Hi. No, you're fine.
Well, have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Hey, Mark.
Yes. Here's what I'm saying. People you know, great. People you don't know, just let me know. Like, I will take care of it.
Hi, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. And I mean, they sometimes make mistakes when you get at it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Have a good day. I'm trying to get. Everything.
Who'd you say, Melissa or Alyssa?
Elizabeth.
Oh, okay. I can turn my camera on. Hi, Constance. Hi, Bree. Thanks for jumping on. We have one in person and you guys are missing it. I got a big candy dish. Jeff has all to himself. Because I said divorce and death is just too depressing to do without candy. All right, Colleen. And I'm still trying to work in some files while we wait. Two.
How are you? I know, it's a big.
Hey, what's
How
up?
are you, pretty lady?
Good, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, just out here getting beat up in the field.
Have you been getting your butt kicked?
I just met an agent in Florida, who looked at this house I have listed. But she doesn't have a license up there yet, the hell is going on?
They don't want to be separated.
So anyways, yeah. She didn't like the house, but. She's like, yeah, I'll be representing myself, I'm like, well, I'm gonna do that when you're not licensed up here. But whatever, I'll let you figure it out smartly.
Yeah.
Hey, if you need somebody to help you, like, look at other properties, happy to show it to you. Yeah, I don't know, it's called. Represent myself, but like, you can unless you're licensed.
Yeah.
And you don't have a brokerage here yet, which is kind of so, okay.
So she gonna let somebody be a dual agent and give her a referral fee or something? Can you even do that?
Yeah, she's licensed in this state. If she's not licensed.
Oh, that,
yet,
yeah. But
you don't have a brokerage up here. That would be like me trying to conduct business in Florida without a license. So, yeah, it's just like, okay, what a great day.
oh. No. This is usually my biggest closing month of the year and it's just night and day. Like last year I had my assistant did a lot and they pushed a lot of those responsibilities on the processor. It was like inundated. So like last week I got all those things moved back to my assistant because I'm like, I can't be in these files past contract. Like I'm the originator.
Yeah,
Y'all have your jobs.
right, you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What time? We got 2 minutes left. Okay. This. Huh?
I went like this, the table.
Oh,
Just loud every day.
does it lock in? I think
No, I'm
the-
about to change up here, Jesus.
they do lock in. I just don't know if they're locked. Put this down. Oh, we got a couple more. Mercedes is here.
Yeah, she told me she was gonna get on those.
Chad's here. Mary Lou. All right.
Oh, you know what I gotta do? Pick up- I'm gonna pick up
I
this
would be
shit.
in person, but they're fixing my
I figured it might be
waterproofing
this
at
way,
home.
because Her office is right beside there.
Nice. Okay.
Yep.
Yay. I was thinking about not going, honestly.
Well, I was too, because of how lame it was last year, so I hope it's better this year. And it'll probably be a lot more fun since we've got a
Down
table.
in the mix.
and
We'll
we're
make it
right-
fun.
Yeah, and we're right there, so we need to find a place to pregame. Or I'm already thinking,
I can't. That's just too early.
it starts at what, 11?
Yeah, but I think they open up the
Thing at 10?
champagne thing early, yeah.
Let's see, let me go to the.
Okay, we still have a minute left, but we have a few in person. For anybody who's on Zoom, I already apologize, but you can't do death and divorce without candy. And I can't share my candy on Zoom.
Doug, you didn't take any candy? You
not.
got first, that
No.
you pass?
I'm gonna, yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, I was preparing for this training.
I was like,
No,
I'm
don't
gonna
even
pass
bring it over
too.
here.
I'm gonna pass too. I haven't had lunch, I'm not.
I'm probably gonna. This is the bad thing too. I picked all my favorites. I should have just picked one of my favorites and then done the rest and stuff I don't like. So we have a good mix of like seasoned and newer loan or agent realtors. So I kind of just wanted to start out with has everyone experienced a transaction where you're dealing with somebody who has either lost the owner of the property or the couple is divorcing or divorced?
Can you write a list too right now?
Two right now.
Yeah.
So we're gonna draw on some of your experiences.
Huh?
And chime in wherever you want to, because I feel like there's so many different scenarios when it comes to this. And I'm gonna share like from the loan side of things, obviously I have to collect those divorce decrees, separation agreements and read through those. So I'll share a couple of experiences. And from your standpoint, do share, but by the end of this, I want everybody to at least feel comfortable enough to be able to advise their clients, because both scenarios are obviously a difficult time, and you become like more than a realtor at that point. Yeah. And I had messaged, I think it was Michelle yesterday about that too. I gotta figure out how to present on here. Share screen. I'm gonna get there. Where we go? Okay. I'm gonna open up the chat so I can see. If somebody can put in there in the chat, you guys, can you see the red presentation?
No,
see the
backdrop.
I can open the chat up. Can you hear me? Can you see the presentation just before I start rambling on? Yay or nay, type in the chat.
I can only see like
No, Mercedes says no. Let me try again, Mercedes. It looks like it is. Sharing screen. The desktop, okay. Try it again. Sorry, this is why I love when Amanda just does it for me. I clicked on the one I wanted. Screen 2. We'll just do that one. Sure. No, it's showing me the same desktop one, even though I clicked the presentation. Stop again. Do you need candy for death and divorce?
Sure.
Take as much as you want.
No death soon.
You're right. right, so that one didn't work, that one didn't work, let's see. It's still, okay, there it is. Okay. Now I'm in business. Okay, so what I had said, and the same applies for our Zoom participants. If you have a situation that you've already experienced with a client, feel free to chime in. You guys can take yourselves off mute. I think there's also a raise hand feature in that toolbar. And then I think this is going to be a really good class to have an open forum on. I always like to have open forums, but a really good class to share different experiences, because it's really hard if you don't have real life applications to kind of apply this stuff and retain it. So for me anyways. So the goal of the training is just to be a good advisor for your clients in that difficult time. We're going to start on divorce. This obviously is going to walk you through some of the real estate related aspects. It's also going to address some of the financial advisor aspects, tax professional aspects, and then also them purchasing. So obviously you guys are going to actually in some ways be a mediator in these cases. If you have a couple that's divorcing, they typically have to agree on a realtor to use to list a property. So that's a great opportunity, but it's also a difficult challenge to remain neutral between both the exes. And obviously you're going to hit bumps in the road, but if they both agree on you, your battle's halfway fought, right? Hello. Do you want some candy? Welcome to Death and Divorce. So the time, okay. Debating on the sale of the home will cost time and money. But the problem is there's going to be multiple factors, not just the payoff of the mortgage. They're going to have different expectations to consolidate death with their divorce. They're going to have different expectations on what they want to walk away with from the net of the sale. So navigating those waters is going to be a lot different than your regular listing, right? You have two different parties that you're trying to figure that out between. Same thing if there's different, there's multiple children that are selling for a deceased family member, and them coming to agreement. So that's when you're going to come into a lot of the sticky situations. And a lot of times it's really good to have an idea of what this looks like. So in divorce, a court is going to look at everything and split it right down the middle. They don't really care about all the personal aspects that divorcing couples want to get hung up on. They're going to look at everything and just say half here, half there. You don't really get to do that with houses. You're going to have the possessions, you're going to have the bills, the utilities, you don't get to neatly, I mean, you can divide the equity in half, but that's pretty much the only thing that you get to neatly split down the middle, right? Especially when it comes to commissions and everything else. So God bless you guys for being in the middle of that. We get to take all the divorce decrees and separation agreements that the attorney has already signed off on, and I get to work with that. Accepting what timeline they're telling you when you get the offer. So obviously a lot of times there's timelines that are court appointed. Maybe it's just a matter of them trying to get into a new home and needing the proceeds for that new home. It's really important to keep them on task, because a lot of times if they're playing these tit for tat things, you're going to have to be the one to remind them, hey, this is what you told me you needed, and this is what you told when you told me you needed it by. I'm just here to make sure that we keep you on track for that. And again, being that neutral party, playing the mediator at times, especially if they have high expectations for what they want out of that house, and you don't have time to let it sit on the market if they're pricing it out of the market, right? So being able to have those tough conversations up front, setting the expectation for what happens if you have to price drop, and what kind of expectations they need to probably trim down if that does happen. Okay. Has anybody seen the movie The Breakup with
With,
Jennifer Anderson and Vince Vaughn. Okay, so when like they're trying to put their condo or apartment on the market, but they're also trying to live in it at the same time, and like there's dirty dishes in the sink and he's throwing poker parties, and then they get called for a showing the next morning and the apartment's trashed, and she's bringing guys over for dates. This is one of those things that probably when you got your real estate license, you didn't think you were going to have to deal with, but it is one of those things you will have to deal with when you have a divorcing couple. So, ideally getting one spouse in the home and hopefully finding placement for the other spouse in the interim, is going to do two things. You're going to be getting half the clutter out, hopefully, if they're taking those possessions with them. And then as far as like the showing appointments and getting those approved and finalized, you're going to hopefully have one person approving those based on when they're available with the property, versus having two that are, maybe they had a disagreement the night before and one wants to be difficult and deny a showing because the other one got all their stuff out, and God forbid, dogs and cats and everything else that's involved with this. So, that's one thing that maybe you want to put in your listing presentation if you are working with a divorced couple, is addressing like who's going to be in the residence, who's going to have say over the listing approvals or the showing approvals, and that matter. Fun stuff. Consulting a tax specialist. A lot of times the attorneys, you'd be surprised, are not actually referring people to their tax specialist. If you would go above and beyond to refer your clients to these other resources, I mean, early on, I always made the assumption that they kind of knew what they were doing if they were in the middle of the process. But I really quickly found out that they really did not know what their next steps were. So having that network of maybe it's even attorneys, maybe they haven't even contacted an attorney yet. Sometimes I had one instance where I was actually somebody's first phone call. Their husband said they wanted a divorce and they decided to call their loan officer. And I was like, okay, we've got to get an attorney in place. Like we need to figure out title with the deed and things like that. So having a network of these people, I don't know if you're newer to the business, it's really good to network with different people in those areas so that you kind of are comfortable with them, and then you can refer your clients to them comfortably. But having these specialists in place is definitely going to set you apart from other agents, but also it's going to be a big difference to your client. Like they're going to remember that, and it's going to be a great help in that time because they have 1,000,001 things flying around. A lot of times the house is the biggest thing on their mind, but then it just trickles down and it's a domino effect. So especially when you're talking about walking away from proceeds from the sale of a home, you want to advise them to talk to a tax specialist, because what you don't want is February 1st rolling around and you get a call from them because they had no idea that they were going to get hit with capital gains or whatever, taxation on their proceeds that are now already spent and gone on legal fees, whatever. So definitely not required, but a really good best practice when you're dealing in this arena for sure. If you have one person that's keeping a house, and like obviously you're going to be contacted because you're going to have the other spouse who hopefully needs to find something else, relocate, remembering to remove the X from the deed. So when we were doing our training for this presentation, somebody had actually mentioned that their spouse refinanced to get them off of the mortgage. They hadn't finalized their divorce. The divorce couldn't be finalized until this was done. It can go both ways, just so you guys know. If somebody says, I want this finance out of my name before we finalize the divorce, that's the safest, best way. If you ever have the opportunity to advise them, that's the best way to do it. Otherwise, they can finalize the divorce with the contingency that the other spouse is going to refinance within X amount of time. Maybe it's 90 days, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 12 months. But the court's not going to follow up on that. And if that spouse decides to be resentful, even though the paperwork says they're no longer liable for the mortgage, that mortgage is still reporting to their credit. And if that spouse goes 2, 3, 4 months without paying the mortgage, it's going to in turn hurt the one who's having it reported. And I've seen spouses that will hurt their own credit in effort to hurt the other person's credit. They don't care. So you never know if you're able to advise them to have that refinance before it's finalized, go that route. But definitely making sure that the deed is filed. So in that situation, the spouse had refinanced. They were still legally married. She showed up to the closing to sign the quit deed to get it out of her name after they closed on the refinance. For whatever reason, that new deed was never recorded with the mortgage. And she went to go buy a home and she still had a property. The mortgage was not on her credit, but she still had a property in her name that she was owner of. So always make sure, and you can do with the county recorder's office, you can do checks on those deeds and things that are recorded in their name file. And if you need any help, obviously title and myself can help too. Yeah, I feel like there was one other situation. Did anybody have any other situations that popped up that they want to share now?
I know that, that is very similar if you're not married as well, if you just buy a house with someone,
Yeah.
you have to
Mm-hmm.
follow the same process.
Yeah.
Your friend, your boyfriend,
Yeah.
yeah.
And luckily, if they have to refinance, obviously that's going to be a to-do. If it's a matter of a quit deed, that's pretty easy to do, inexpensive to do. But yeah, and then, for us, the state of Ohio, dower, we're one of the 3 states that still have dower rates. So even if they don't, their name's not on the deed, they still have rights to that property if they were married. So just some
How
things
would
to be
it
aware of.
go if you were, keeping the house, but the partner that's keeping the house, if it didn't qualify, they had a higher debt to, income ratio, how would that work? They would just have to keep it as is for a while?
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't have a choice. Yeah, they would have to sell it. I did have a situation where someone was like not able to get financing right away within the court's terms, and obviously they're in contempt of court at that point. So in order to kind of pivot, they did a land contract. So the spouse agreed to take their name off the deed completely. And then the owner, because it was a mortgage issue, so they basically said, this deed is in my name alone until you can pay off that mortgage, whenever it is. So you continue to be responsible for the payments as long as you can make those payments. If not, they would take the house back over and they would be able to sell it. But they had the land contract recorded. So that's another point I want to make. If they have to go this route, which is messy and not preferable, but understanding that not everybody qualifies to refinance it at that time, make sure that it's recorded with the county. They could draw it up between themselves, but if it's not recorded with the county down the road, if that spouse goes to refinance, they can't use the ownership of those months through the land contract unless it's recorded. So usually you have to have ownership of the property for 6 months before you're eligible to refinance. Otherwise, it's a whole new purchase from them. But yeah, if they go the land contract route, make sure that it is recorded with the county. Just getting into the nitty gritty. All right. So our mortgage options when dealing with divorce, and I could get into all the ins and outs. Obviously, we've talked about refinance. As long as refinance is a possibility, that's going to be the fastest way to get them off the loan. It's going to be whole new terms. It's going to be a whole different rate based on their qualifications. So they could, it doesn't mean that they have to go back to a 30-year loan. They could end up shaving the term down if they don't have that much left. But what you're going to run into now is the people that have bought in the last 4 years, the first 2020, 2021, 2022, they have great rates. And they're going to be looking at a huge increase in their rate and their probably their mortgage payment, unless they spread the payment back out, but they're still going to be paying a lot more interest. on the loan, and you're gonna get a lot more pushback on it. And I wanna see. They didn't put this in the next slide. I wanted to make sure. Okay, the other thing I wanted to bring up was assumptions. It's very widely known that FHA is an assumable mortgage, and that can be between, buyer and the seller that are not related whatsoever. Assumption can also be done on conventional loans depending on the lender. So they usually have their own assumption department. If, say, the spouse calls that has the mortgage in their name and says, hey, I wanted to know if my property was eligible for an assumption to my spouse. And the last circumstances, it doesn't have to be a finalized divorce or separation. As long as there's enough equity in the property and the spouse is willing to close any other lien. So if they have a home equity line out, they'll want that closed. So they can't max that out or any other debts come against the property, but you can close out that home equity line, and they can assume the same term and rate and just pick up the payments in their name instead. There's usually a fee that goes along with that, and it still is about $5,000, about the same price as a refinance. But at least you don't have to take the rate. So not many people know about that option. They don't even have it in this presentation. But definitely worth a call. The worst they can say is no. But it's not just FHA. Conventional is assumable in certain circumstances, and your lender will be able to tell you if you qualify for it. Obviously selling the house is another option. In some cases, this could be the cleanest option for them, depending on what the debts look like, if they're able to come to terms of agreements and things like that. So transferring the taxes, the capital gains like we talked about, especially if they haven't lived in the property for 2 years, that's something that you want to be aware of. And then just refer them to that tax consultant, because obviously it's not something that should, like, you guys aren't liable for it, but we're always the first one to be called when something goes wrong. And they're obviously going to have like that, bad taste in their mouth because, well, I think you should have told me this. Pay your agreed upon share of the equity of the home. A lot of times this is court ordered to be 50-50. And again, it's not so easy as just paying these things out. They definitely want to consult their tax or advisor. If in their case, there's a ton of equity, one person is staying in the house, and they need to do a refinance to get the mortgage out of their name. A lot of times it's going to be a cash out refinance, which is also going to drive up their rate. But if they have to pay out the equity to their partner, a lot of times they don't have the cash asset or the liquid asset. A lot of times it's going to be a cash out refinance. So in one foul swoop, they're going to be assuming the mortgage in their name. Sophia, we're talking about death and divorce. You want candy? You've had a week too, huh?
Just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I want candy.
So the refinance is going to be twofold. They're going to be able to pay out the equity that they owe their partner. They're going to be able to take the deed out of the partner's name and take the debt out of the partner's name. So I mean, that's pretty clean cut, definitely. But again, even if you're selling, which obviously when you're talking about who's going to be in the home, who's going to move out of the house, how are we going to have it staged, who's going to approve the showings, are we going to be able to agree upon a price or an offer to accept, like that. But that could be a great way for you guys to get 3 transactions. I'm just saying. The sale and 2 purchases. Evaluating the home's equity. Obviously, you guys are really good about doing those market comparisons, and doing that in your listing presentation. Some attorneys are also going to ask for an official appraisal. So obviously you'll have the cost of that, and they'll probably need to split it. But depending on what route they're going to go in that equity, most attorneys are going to advise, like, they'll start with the market comparison. And some of them are just going to want that appraisal, especially if there's any question of like the opinion of value. tax implications, we've said it a million times already. We're not the tax professionals. However, we do know that there are instances where they're going to get hit with some taxes. And if those aren't withheld at the proper time in the proper way, they will come back to bite them months down the road. Protecting your credit. I kind of hit on this a little too early, but like I said, just because the court has deemed that a mortgage is not the other party's responsibility does not mean it stops impacting them. And perfect example, I've had several people bring me the divorce decrees, separation agreements, and it says, hey, that credit report has that mortgage on it. She's not responsible for it. He's completely responsible for the taxes, the insurance, the upkeep of that property and the mortgage. I get to exclude it from her debt, but it's still impacting her credit. So if, like I said, somebody decides they want to be spiteful and miss a couple payments, they're going down with the ship. So also why it's very important to choose your partners. And oh gosh, I cringe every time I have a young couple applying for a mortgage together when they're not married or anything. And I have somebody calling this week that closed last year and things have gone downhill and they want to know how they could get out of it. That was one of the ones I just knew was going to be calling back. I just knew. This slide also makes me think of, in college, I had what was he? I think he was, so accounting and attorneys, like my law professors and my accounting professors, a lot of times accountants also have a law degree. I don't know why those things are like interchangeable so often, but I think it was my law professor said, before you get married, make sure you get a credit report and a background check. He actually said never get married. He's like, but if you have to, make sure you get a credit report. And if you have to, get a credit report and a background check. You know, you guys have forewarned, so.
They don't have money, they just take all that stuff off their background and lives.
Yeah. Do you speak from experience too? She's like, they can pay it to get it removed. This is true. So I go back to if you have to get married. So I don't know which one's worse, death or divorce. You guys can tell me. For anybody that jumped on or is joining us, this is an open forum. So if you have dealt with either an estate or a divorcee couple and you have some input for us, please chime in, because I think those experiences, those real life situations are definitely invaluable. So the first step in helping a family, and I had one lady call because she knew me personally, she was looking for a realtor. And I said, well, who's the executor of the estate? She goes, well, I don't know. I said, do you know who the attorney is? And she gave me a keychain. I was like, what is this? She's like, that's the attorney's number. It was the keychain I've had on that we went years and years ago, and I don't know what's in that will. I was like, okay. The most important first step is knowing who owns the property, knowing who has the rights to that property, because the last thing you want to do is like bust your butt to do this amazing listing presentation and then you can't do anything because they're not even the right person to talk to, or it's going to be tied up for months and months in probate, and all that information is going to be changing on you anyways. So most important first step. And if you guys want me to share this presentation, I'll be happy to email it afterwards if you don't know. Especially when you have multiple children. I don't know why this thing. Okay. Ways that the property may be titled. You definitely want to check for that joint tenancies with rights of survivorship. Even if say they have a former spouse that's still on the deed as a right of survivorship, you could have an executor of the estate that's trying to sell the house, but you still have a surviving name on that deed. Doesn't matter if they're still married or not. If they're on there with rights of survivorship, they still have rights to the deed. So definitely make sure that's a clear expectation. And again, you can do that just by pulling the county site or asking your friendly title providers. The trust is also going to be something that's very, very intricate. So you can have a revocable trust, an irrevocable trust, and you have trustees of the trust. So you definitely want to make sure you track down and see who's in charge of the trust, who controls it, because it could be somebody different than who's managing the estate too.
So, if somebody has a transfer on death deed,
Mhm.
just because they have that transfer on death deed in their hand, if they don't file it after, at the courthouse.
Yeah.
And then they have to take a death certificate down
Mhm.
and show proof that and then it gets transferred into the name. It's
Mhm.
not an automatic.
Right.
It's still 90 days, isn't it, after that? Or is it gonna-
No, it's instant.
It should be quicker than that.
Yeah, as long as you file it and it's filed, you just take that death certificate down and automatically it's gonna transfer.
Yeah.
But if, you know.
But you
it
have
might
to-
be a longer process if you wait until they're dead and then.
Yeah. You have to file it. Do you know, is there a time frame that they have to do that in, or can they do it?
There's no time. We had one last year and it was filed at the courthouse, but they never took the
To transfer it, actually
transfer.
transfer.
So they did it and I mean, we had it listed within a week or so.
Okay.
So. it was
Yeah.
fine. But it had been almost 2 years
Yeah.
that the person had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So just so our Zoom attendees can hear, what Diane was sharing was there is also a transfer on death deed. So they can put, I think it's like an addendum on the original deed that says, if I die, the deed automatically transfers. So it's different from the joints of with rights of survivorship, because that's filed when the deed's filed. This kind of comes alongside it and it gives them rights to that deed. But they still have to take the death certificate down to the court and have it filed so that the deed actually does transfer to them. They have rights to transfer it, but they have to do the transferring for them to have rights to the property. And she shared it was like a week to get that done once it was filed. Okay, good. Thank you. That's what we're looking for. Ooh, yeah, back. Okay. Same thing, next steps is valuing the property. And again, in the same situation as the divorcing couple, you might have multiple family members, especially if they are going through, you know, a lot of sentimental, belongings, or it's a recent loss and they have a lot of sentimental ties to the property. You're going to have your work cut out for you when it comes to valuing the property. So you guys are always in these trainings where they're always preaching, just set a realistic expectation. Obviously, they're your client. You have to do what they want, you know, to list it for. But I would just say, like, as a professional, this is where I would put it. We can try it here, but I want to know how long before we can look at dropping the price, and what are we going to drop that to? So setting that expectation, and, you know, in some cases, maybe they do want an appraisal up front. I know, like, in some situations, they have encouraged getting an appraisal before you go to list, which is fine, but what's an appraisal? It's an opinion of value, and that opinion is going to vary between appraiser and appraiser. And at the end of the day, the value that is going to stand is the buyer's bank's appraisal. So I would just advise them on that too. That kind of trumps everything else, and we all know what it's like when those appraisals come in lower and once in a while higher. Did I get that last? I don't even know how I'm doing on time. Pretty good. We zoomed through divorce like a bunch of professionals. I have some practice. Executing the required disclosures. This is another tricky one, and I will just disclaimer it here so you all can see, and this is recorded so Rich can see. When in doubt, call your broker. Basically. those property disclosures are not required if the seller hasn't lived in the property. There is a form that they can fill out that says, I have no knowledge of any of this. I haven't lived in the property, and it should be as simple as that. But if there's any like, you know, unique situations and maybe like, in my mind, I'm thinking of an elderly parent and maybe their child had moved in temporarily to help them during those last stages of life. Well, how long before they live there do they have to say, I lived there and I was aware of these things? You know, don't you? No, okay.
But if the property, if they're on the deed, it's in their name, they have to fill out a property disclosure, whether they lived in the home or not, it's just like an investor. They have to fill out a property disclosure. You can't write at the top, never lived in the property, put a slash through it. That's not the way they have to
Yeah.
answer the questions.
Okay,
If it is an estate sale, it's still in the person that passed away's name. Then you fill out the exemption
perfect.
and you choose how they're doing it.
Right. Okay,
But yeah, if it's in their name,
they have
they
to do
have to fill it
something.
out.
Okay.
Isn't there a section on the disclosure that says I've never lived at this property and none on defects?
No. It says, are you currently living in the property? If not, when did you move? But there's nothing that says, right, that you're not,
Mhm.
Right.
you could put that on there, but you still have to answer all the questions.
Right, okay.
I'm saying, so a good point that Diana made is if their name is on the deed to any degree, they do have to fill out the full property disclosure. They can write on there that they didn't live in the property, but they can't do an exemption form in that case. In that case, they actually do have to do the full property disclosure. And obviously we know if there's any things that they're aware of, structural problems, boundary issues, if there's, a fence impeding on another person's property, if there are any deaths, then it doesn't matter if it's suicide or other natural causes or any environmental hazards. So if they're aware, they're still liable in court, depending on how they fill that out. Does anybody have any questions?
If you get a private appraisal, does that stick with the property at all? You guys said?
Mm-mm. No, especially because you're just getting a general one. When a lender orders it, we're gonna order a specific form. So if it's a VA, it's gonna be on a VA appraisal form. If it's an FHA loan, it's gonna be an FHA appraisal form. Those are the ones that are gonna stick with the property. And for, it's a 90 days, I believe, on the FHA appraisals that stays with the property before they can actually like reappraise it and try for a different value. But if it's just a general, they're not gonna have that identity form attached to it. And it will be, it doesn't have to be like shared knowledge. I mean, do they usually, if they get the appraisal done, have you ever seen them on the MLS with like property disclosures or anything?
No,
I've seen them at the house. They
Yeah.
Left them in a binder.
And they're always so much lower, like, I
Mhm.
don't know why, in my experience, it's like.
Yeah,
Way off,
yeah,
like if it's not for sale, they just do it,
yeah.
I don't know why, but.
So the question is, if they do a private appraisal before listing, does that stick with the property? And so that was the first part of my response. But then she said, sometimes it'll be on the counter when you do the showings or the open houses, and they're always lower values. And here is why. When we order the appraisal, we share the purchase agreement with them. So they know what it's going for, and it's their job to justify it. So they have to support it with the comps, the adjustments. So it's a blind appraisal when they're going in for that pre-listing or that general private. But when they have a purchase agreement on the property, and a lot of people think that that's, so absurd that they get to see the purchase price, and it's really not. I mean, they're still accountable to have the correct comps with the recent sales within the vicinity with all the proper adjustments. So, and they can be audited. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would wanna have a private one.
I know.
Share it with them. I don't think we owned the property when they were.
Burn it.
What? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I don't know why.
Everyone say that way.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
But yeah.
Yeah. And who knows, like timeline wise, if they do that, say they do an appraisal in February and they get ready to list in May when the market starts heating up, and now you have all these like that could be so skewed. It's hard to tell. I should look at the chat. I'm sorry, guys. Preston said, tell your families to speak with an attorney, get properties in a trust because probate is a giant pain. Thank you, Preston, because I didn't go over that. Sold his late grandma's house and probate was a pain. Okay, so I'm in a professional networking group, have been for years. Preston, what'd you say on the exemption form list out? Okay, yeah, acceptable reasons. I love what the attorney in our group, our networking group says, but pretty much every week, if you don't have a plan for your estate, the state does. And they will take pretty much everything if you don't have it protected. Even if you do have an estate plan or a trust or a will, it's still going to have to go through probate. It's just going to go through a lot faster and you're going to be able to keep all your assets. If they don't have a plan for any of that, expect 8 to 12 to 14 months of probate. So that's going to be really, really important. I cannot believe I forgot to mention this, but that's going to be really important up front before anybody wastes their time. Because what happens if you get that house under contract and title goes to transfer title and now you have to deal with probate? It's like you're not going to be able to keep that buyer on the hook, and you're going to have to spend money on more photos and relisting again down the road whenever that comes about. So really pain in the butt, but it's also very good advice. If you do not have a plan for your assets, the state has one for you. I don't think I have any other questions or comments in the chat. Does anybody on Zoom have any questions or comments, any situations or scenarios to share? I was gonna say I'm surprised Mercedes does it, and then she took herself off mute. Let me see. Let's get my volume up. Maybe.
I have one I can think of that basically I was helping. The mother was in a nursing home. The son hired me, and because he was power of attorney or something, I don't remember exactly, but they hired me. We listed it, and the mom passed away in the middle of it. And then because of that, I lost the listing because the aunt became in control of everything and hired the person she wanted, even though I tried to talk to her.
Yeah. So that's good. You try to at least brace yourself for what could happen in the middle of the process.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. The same person that reached out to me to sell her brother's property, she was the power of attorney. And I said, well, this, is no good. Once they pass, the power of attorney goes away. You don't have any power to sell this property. And that seems pretty simple and straightforward, but if this is not something that people do every day, sometimes they might only ever have to deal with a death once in their lifetime, maybe twice in their lifetime. So that's why it's so important to be well-versed and kind of be the advisor to walk them through these things.
And make sure if it's a death that all the children are on the same page. You're not just talking to one person, because I've had another situation where I had to communicate with like 5 different sibling members after a death, and they all had to be on the same page. So I had to get like a group message going, and it was just, but it's sold.
Were they all local Mercedes, or were they like spread
No,
out?
only 2 of them were local.
Okay. Preston, what's up?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear ya.
It's a baby day, so I'm working from home.
A baby day.
Yeah, I was actually thinking
I'll
I
take one
had.
of those baby days for you if you want.
All right, sounds good to me.
So were you sharing about your you had shared about your grandma's house because you guys spent a
Yeah.
while working on that. What did you find out about the probate before you worked on it or after?
No, it was just kind of we started working on it, and then probate basically said just hold on, you know, and so we had to wait for 6 or 8 months before we can even start back on the house, and it was just a big giant mess that we could have had this house sold shoot at the peak of the season if and then not, later in the year like it should have been or what like it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the time of year is definitely going to impact how much you can get for that client too. So
And I can't remember what the type of trust is, family trust, whatever is recommended. That's why I'm like, just talk to an attorney, they'll know what you're talking about.
yeah. Yeah. And like I said, they still have to go through probate, but when they have those plans in place, it's a lot faster.
Yes.
An attorney can navigate those waters fairly quicker than
Very,
without one.
very. But you know what? In Mercedes' situation, knowing that the mother was in bad health, I think if I were in that boat and then you had a power of attorney that you were working with and they were on board, I would try to get that transfer on death in place sooner rather than later. Cause I would think that that would probably be the fastest, most cost-effective way to ensure that that deed is going to stay out of probate. It's going to go to that person that was making the decisions in the first place and not interrupt the process.
Can you do that on a deathbed?
I don't know if a power of attorney could do that, but I'm saying like, even if you use like, if you have the person who's in the bad health, if they can still sign for themselves to put the transfer on death on that deed. Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, you don't necessarily need, I mean, it would be great to have an attorney advise all of this. But if you are in the middle of a sale and say you already have a buyer and you have half the stuff done, uh, the court doesn't care. They will shut that sale down immediately. Unless you have, and maybe that's what you have to do is like go down to the county and get that transfer on death and get that recorded.
So, say someone wants to sell, but they don't have any of the paperwork, well, like, you said we can just go on the auditor site, or what site do you recommend we
So
find?
all the
best?
deeds and mortgages are recorded publicly. So you can look through the recorder's website and see all the public records for that property.
Mhm.
I mean, everything. But if you feel like, maybe there's a discrepancy or maybe some other paperwork was like filled out with an attorney, but maybe not recorded with the auditor, you could always ask your title rep if they wanted to do a search or verify. Especially if there's other liens on the property, you wouldn't know that. So that's going to impact what they need to walk away with, or, what out of that estate is going to need settled.
I just had a situation in one of the two upcoming listings I got. She is, the executor of the estate. She's got the right to sell. She didn't know her brother had somehow got her mother to sign a home equity line. They didn't know until after her mother passed. And it started to go into foreclosure because nothing was paid on that home equity line. So now we're still gonna sell it, even though the paperwork has been filed for foreclosure, we can still do that, but, yeah, so you don't know what liens are
Mm-hmm.
been taken out on that home.
And you really have to watch for Medicare liens too.
Oh, yeah, I had one of those. My, buyer, she actually bought it and no one at title had said anything. And I'm just like, they're calling us like, oh yeah, don't worry, there's still a lien on the Medicaid lien on the property. We're gonna use the proceeds. The kids are gonna use the proceeds to pay off all these bills.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, what? Because it still technically was on my buyer. It's like, well, if you would have told us this ahead of time, we wouldn't have signed today. That's crazy. But that's just the way she said she had to do it. Like, that's just,
Well, they have to use the proceeds from the sale to pay
Yeah.
off those.
right,
They
yeah.
can't
Like, so,
Like,
you know, that's.
let them pay it after. It has to be. go
Yeah.
through title.
Yeah. And they had, so what they were talking about in person, guys, is other liens on the property. So in one case, somebody had a home equity line that was out and hadn't been paid, and the home was actually going into foreclosure and they have it listed to sell. And the other case, she said you need to look for Medicaid liens. And the way that that process works, so her buyer had signed the closing documents and there was still a lien against the property. So when the bank funds the loan, they disperse the funds to the title company, and the title company is supposed to be doing all the payoffs. But we can't disperse until we have the signed closed work. So they do sign in order for the funds to disperse. The title company uses the disbursement to do all the payoffs, and some of them are mailaways, some of them are wires, but there are some mailaways at times. So that could take some time to hit, but they're also gonna, depending on the time of year, they also have to make sure the tax bill is paid. Because they're gonna credit the seller and the buyer accordingly for the time of year. But then all of that has to be recorded after disbursement and the funds are there. So,
That's why your buyer has title insurance too, so that if a lien is missed, they have that insurance that's gonna cover everything.
Yeah, because it's good to search stuff like that, if, just randomly, like, before you get into it.
Yeah.
It is a death, because then I could have told her, like, well, let's just make sure they're netting enough, and I don't
Yeah.
know if they'll share how much is owed, or.
yeah,
She's like, what if I owe $2,000? I'm like, it's okay, she said we won't, right?
yeah.
She told both of us that.
Yeah.
But it's like nerve wracking if you haven't explained it.
Yeah.
By the time they-
She found out at the closing table though?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What are you gonna do?
Right.
Still went through.
Right. Yeah.
Not good luck on my part, like.
Well, that's not your fault.
Well, I know,
That's
but
a
you know,
title
it-
issue.
Yeah.
That's
And
you're
honestly,
the face.
yeah.
The face of that.
yeah. And yeah, you can, as long as you help them navigate it, that's a moment, that's an opportunity for you to shine, but still, you feel bad. It's funny too, because like, it wasn't a death, it wasn't a estate, nothing, but Preston had a FSBO. Preston, I'm gonna share your story, because she was talking about liens being on the property and them not netting as much as they thought they needed to, and that
Oh,
impacting the
that's
sale.
fun. Yeah,
So,
I'm
Preston,
still proud of this one. Still waiting for it to close.
is it too soon to share?
No, go ahead. No.
Okay. So, this poor lady was told that she would, first off, they're two friends putting this deal together, but the buyer involved Preston. So it's technically a FSBO, and he's representing the buyer who's friends with the seller. And the seller says, I'm gonna give you this house for this low price. It seems unreal. And she's like, no, that's what I owe on it. And I'm getting this big lump of money from the Ohio lottery. What was it, Preston? It wasn't the lottery. What?
It was a tax,
The IRS was giving her a bunch of money.
something like that.
I always have to give them a bunch of money.
Yeah.
I don't get out.
No, somebody from IRS called her and said, checks in the mail. So she sells for this low price, and
Until I got the check.
Yeah.
I don't go on and do anything, but.
Someone needs to
Okay.
help.
right? And Preston is like, I'm trying
Mind you,
to
we're
represent-
under contract for this price.
Yeah, we're under contract. And Preston's trying to be neutral between the two parties, even though he's really representing the buyers.
Yeah.
And he finds this information out before they did, and he's, obviously this friend doesn't want to tell her friend that she's selling it to that she messed up or that she was so gullible. But she's like, well, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to double the purchase price.
Wow.
They signed. They did. They signed.
Well, she might not be a friend.
But I
By
will
far-
say, I will
By
say
far
this.
my greatest achievement in my real estate career.
What'd you say, Preston?
So far, it's my greatest achievement in real estate.
The greatest
Convincing
achievement
someone
is
to
real
buy the
estate
same house for
career.
double the price.
Yeah.
Wild.
Well, we did double the price, but I will say this, the appraisal came in 20 grand higher than the purchase price.
Yeah. So,
We caught the appraisal in time, which who knows, because it came in higher anyways. But we caught the appraisal in time so that they had the new addendum to the purchase price. So also side note, if you have any price changes before the appraiser goes out, make sure your lender has that addendum. Very important. Sometimes, and I'm not saying that this is right or wrong, if I have, like, if you guys have an inspection that comes back and your buyer has gotten the purchase price lowered because of the inspection report, I don't usually share that. I usually let the appraiser have the higher value so that we can have our best, because that's still going to be negotiating power. So if the appraisal comes in higher and there's something else that they want the seller to pay, you can still negotiate that into the purchase price because now our value is up there and we have a little bit of wiggle room. So that's my side note. Bye, Heather.
Sorry.
Do you need any more candy?
No, I'm good. I'm gonna go get our tickets.
Okay.
How are you?
Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions, if you want a copy of this, put your email in the chat and I'll send you this slideshow. If you're in person, you can write your email right here and I'll make sure I email it out too. But we have a whole menu of trainings, like very good trainings across all spectrums. So marketing, how to communicate, literally down to how to communicate with different types of clients.
come here, Bailey.
Social media. I think we have a training now for AI. So I try to rotate these every month here, but if there's any other trainings that you'd be interested in, we could always have a one-on-one. I'd be happy to share. Okay. Preston, Mercedes, Bree, thank you for hanging in there.
Yeah. Thanks
Through our
for showing.
divorce, and Mary Lou is
Thanks for,
still on. Oh, I
Thank you
couldn't
so
see her.
much.
I know it's not the funnest of, and you guys didn't have our candy either to get you through it. So
Just save some for me. I'll be in there soon.
I will. I'll put it in my office. You guys ping me if you have any questions about anything, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
The unboxing.
Don't be so, go open your own stuff like that.
That's what my daughter is 8, and that's like all she watches. And I'll be like, get off of YouTube. I need you to watch something with a beginning, a middle, and an end, a storyline. Like, you know what I did the last couple weeks was take him over to the library, and I thought I was going to be crucified for it, but they ended up liking it. We used to do it all the time, but got out of the habit. But yeah.
I'm hardcore camping right now, and yeah, they'll like try to be late inside. I'm like,
Yeah. Because they're still on their tablets. And do you have a camper with a TV and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't go to fire.
Yeah. Don't. You can't start a fire at home, but you can start a fire here.
Go online, watch them start a fire.
Right.
Get off of YouTube. I'm learning how to start a fire. Oh my gosh. We're going camping this weekend, and we went at the beginning of summer, and their favorite part of it was the tubing. We went tubing down the river and just had like a cooler of snacks and drinks and a speaker, so like Carter could hook his phone up to it and be the DJ. And for like 2-3 hours, we were just floating. And then at one point there was like a rope swing. So they got out and did the little rope swing. And I was like, never in a million years did I think that they would be okay with just floating down a river for 2 hours.
I used to do it in Wisconsin all the time. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
We
I
did the 9-hour trips, so.
Ooh, no, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think 9 hours I could do.
You get
Yeah,
out.
I'd be peeing in the water and
third to
everything.
I was gonna say. Or you have to, like, there's no,
One spray.
yeah, there's no porta johns out there.
There's
That's like Mohican. The first time we went, we did their rafts, and I'm like, never again. Like, this is disgusting. Yeah, bring my own raft next time.
We got a place park, it's fun here.
Yeah,
I just built a whole bunch of little cabins everywhere so you can like.
and their splash pad and water park is like super souped up.
Yeah. All kinds of new stuff. It's a lot of fun, they like it. But they'll ride their bikes and go. do
Yeah.
party and I go
Make
out
friends.
A lot, but yeah, once they go outside, it's like, you gotta go find them.
Or don't.
Yeah, or no.
All right, well, I've got
Thank you.
thank you guys for coming. I know usually these classes are like bare bones, so this is actually pretty good. Thanks for taking time out of your busy week. Hope you got something out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a good rest of your week. Did Sam get back to you?
Sam wants me to stick.
Of
with her,
course.
So I'm like, since I had
It's
already talked
fine.
to her first.
Yeah. It's fine. I'm hoping my assistant is in Michigan. And I'm hoping to get her down here. Because if I can get her to work the tent, because what we'll do is she'll just stay with me and then her and I will go out and golf the next day.
Oh, okay.
But like I want to golf in the outing, but I also want to be at the tent to say hi to everybody.
See, I wouldn't have to go to because like you have drinks.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Sam's not having drinks, so.
No, but you can drink around her
I
and
will.
she's fine
Oh,
with
yeah, I
it.
will.
Oh, so we went to Caddis, a girl that used to be in the league like 2 or 3 years ago. Well, Devin, she was a realtor here.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay. So she moved down to her family's property in Caddis, and it's like 10,000 cattle farm, like 10,000 acre cattle farm.
Oh, God.
And then they have a 18-person hunting lodge on the property. So the last 2 summers, we have a golf weekend where all the girls can go down from Friday through Sunday. She has a pontoon on tap in, and then they go golfing at the little course down there.
Okay.
So last weekend was that. On the first week or the first year, I only got to go Friday night and then I came back. But this year I got to stay for Friday night and the boating, and then I came home and I didn't golf. But Sam went down for the whole weekend,
Okay.
and I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, that does shock me, but.
We were on the boat for like 6 hours. It got a little rowdy.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
She's like sitting on the lily pad with like her hat and her super cute, Marilyn Monroe bathing suit. And like, and is like, on the and then like Jenna, did you ever call the Jenna Peters? Aaron
Yeah,
Roby's wife?
Yeah, well, she wasn't my partner, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so the circles.
Mhm.
So Ange went off the front of the boat, did a flip off the front of the boat. So then Jenna's like, she tried it and was like, I think I can do that. So then we went to the back because it's a little higher. So we both flipped off the back of the boat. And the next thing I know, I'm down in the water and Jenna's doing a handstand off the front of the boat and flipping
my
into the
God.
water.
See, I'm too old. I can't do that kind of stuff anymore. Like I might do a cannonball.
Yeah.
That's about all you're gonna get.
But then you have like the people that are just floating, like they're just bobbing in the water with their drink.
Yeah.
And we had like 90s country on, and then like
Nice.
later they put on some rap, but like they were taking requests. We had a ton of snacks and food on the boat.
Yeah.
And then when we went back,
How many did you have?
7 on the boat.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think then more ladies went down Sunday morning to golf with them.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Oh,
they
that's
ended up
cool.
having it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, it was funny. At one point we were all like on the lily pad, like talking about love languages. And I was like, this is just quite the roller coaster. It's like,
Little bit of this, little bit of that. So has anybody done the,
Agent Plus.
Agent Plus?
I asked my boss if his market, because he's at Elevate, and he goes, yeah, we have. I don't think you do though, because like a couple people walked up to me and like, I'm gonna get that training done. I'm gonna get that training done. I haven't had anybody finish their training yet in this office.
Yeah, I haven't started it yet. I was going to after boat ended and then
Yeah,
I haven't done it. And then I'm going on a cruise in a few weeks. So
Yeah,
I'm like.
and this
ah,
is our busiest
then
season.
Yeah. so
Yeah.
Send out refresh emails.
Yeah,
Cause that's what happened with me. It got buried under a list and I tried digging through. I just found out today, my federal background check still hasn't went through.
Really?
They've requested it 5 times now.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No,
So the first 2 times it got sent over to Ohio Department of Insurance. And it's BCI and I. So you know how slow they are about getting anything done.
yeah, no,
But I mean, I'm working on my 3rd deal now and they're gonna screw me up.
yeah,
I'm gonna be upset if it suspends my license. 'cause
yeah. No, I would be too.
I was actually gonna ask you a few questions.
Yeah.
next time.
I'm done.
Let me know, let me know when you are ready to do that, because I have some cram stuff too. And I'll
I'm
help.
so paranoid, like,
I know.
I, like, the real estate test was almost 21 years ago. I'm like, I'm not the best test taker, and to have to take a test again, I'm like. oh,
It'll be
like,
hard.
eight hours, like, I really-
Well, I just got, cause we have to do ours, we have 8-hour course for our license renewal every year.
Okay.
And everybody's is due on December 31st. It doesn't matter when your birthday is, when you got licensed, like everybody's due at the same time. So yesterday they just sent out our invite for the 8-hour course. And I'm like, this is my 8th year doing it. And I'm still going, why do I need to do this during my busiest season? Like, that's stupid, number one. But then I have another hour for each state that I'm licensed in. Florida, North Carolina. And I don't think I have to do, no, I don't have to do one for Ohio.
Ohio.
I am licensed in Ohio.
No.
Mhm. Yeah.
You guys tonight.
What time do we tee off? 32? Okay, that's not bad.
I will be there. Cindy should be.
Just, you'll have Pete drive you out.
Yeah, if I can find somebody else.
That dirty old man.
Neighbors know him, so I know a little backstory, but. Oh my.
I know. Danielle runs into him like all the time. Yeah, because she goes to the same like hangouts. Yeah.
Movies. Where
Yeah.
else I think he goes, so.
Yeah. I forget where else, but it'll be fun.
It'll be a nice night too. It's gonna be nice.
I know. I know.
I gotta look nice for my showing, but I'm changing my top.
Oh, are you? Are those your golf pants?
Yeah, these are
Okay.
okay.
Nice. Strategic. Uh-huh.
It's like dress, they look dressy, but they're golf.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We'll see ya. She's gonna kick our butts.
How have you been? It's been forever.
I've,
Way too long.
yeah.
I was going to ask you though, how does